listening to the Adventuring Party for the second week of February 2022. This week, the party becomes unstoppable, and we explain what to do when that happens. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and radio gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Scarr.
And today, we are here to discuss what happens when a player goes beyond plus ultra. When the common man is but chaff beneath his blade. When you can walk through a storm of bullets, just shrugging and possibly laughing and maybe even ignoring the forces of the hoi polloi. What happens when you're beyond the curve? Today we're going to talk about what happens when a character goes kind of beyond what the surrounding average NPC is capable of. I'm not talking about a little better. I'm talking about so much better that they can ignore them. That they're not relevant. That 2 cops, 10 cops, 100 cops are not an obstacle. They're just flavouring. They're set dressing. They're something they might choose to interact with, but can presumably just ignore. Thoughts? Shane?
I will say I have seen a little bit of this in my current Savage Worlds game, where most of the players are, they've been focusing on their mad science skills, and, in a straight fight, they've got a bit of skill, but mostly they're just sort of running around trying to avoid bullets until they can use their various tricks. And then we have the tank player who has basically become invincible, and bullets just ping off him, and he's able to take out an entire special ops team in a single round with a Benny or two.
Okay.
And that's with Savage Worlds was actually quite difficult to go fully immune, because someone could still spike a roll and you're in trouble. Someone could roll 3d6 and roll boxcars once and then roll another 6, and then even if you're really, really up there in terms of toughness, that'll still hurt you.
There have been times when he has been hurt slightly, but those have mainly been very lucky exploding dice situations. The average dice roll will, unless is acing? Unless some dice explode.
Dice explode, yeah.
Then gigantic 7-foot tall predator just sort of tears into him, and it's just like, well, I guess I need to spend a Benny to not be shaken next round, and then I'll just, use him to test all these local trees for break resistance.
10 guys with shotguns will generally mess you up even when they're mooks in Savage Worlds. Unless you're serious, you're... Ugh. Because point blank, 3d6 plus 2 to hit? More? I think you get more than 3d6 with a point blank shotgun. So, at that point, you can usually spike a couple. If you send 10 guys with double barrel shotguns against them and they all get into short range, even a monster, what's he rocking around in toughness wise?
I believe it was something like toughness 12, but there's Kevlar gives you +4 against all bullets. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very tough, but not as you can technically spike that. It's just that they have bennies to save for the real spikes. Just go, okay, well, I'll benny that. I'll suck that one with the toughness check. Yeah, no, can happen.
But then again, this is a high level character. This is someone like he started becoming really invincible around 20-30 XP. Sorry, I'm thinking of old Savage Worlds. It's 10, 15 advancements. I think at that point it was when basically didn't have to worry about guns.
Is that 10 or 20 sessions in?
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's not that long.
It isn't.
Well, for me, that's not that long.
It isn't, but that's getting 1 advance every 2 sessions, basically, which is actually slower than the default rate, because Savage Worlds...
Oh. Yeah.
Savage Worlds is actually an advance every session these days, which I was very floored by, so I immediately cut it down to 1 every 2. And now we're at 40 sessions into a campaign, and most of the rest of them are reasonable, And it's mostly equipment that gives them an edge, whereas this guy who's focused on a few things is just like, I'm just going to walk, just charge the trench. Just charge the trench, punch the guys, it'll be fine. And it's funny, and it's not like out of genre for this weird pulp thing where he's basically, the Mook from a World War II movie in a gas mask and with a minigun or something. Like it's not out of genre. It's just a very interesting mechanical thing.
Yeah, he sounds like he's fulfilling a role in the team though, like, and as in, covering for the others.
Yes,
like, so to speak.
Oh yeah, it's a very useful role. It's just when you think about how it would, contract with the regular world, it just feels a little odd. And then you have to realize, well, they probably have robot police or something, or trained dragon dogs somewhere in some kennel somewhere.
Like, you see, the core of this problem for me is when your average bit of opposition, your average user of force that you could deploy against a PC is insufficient to stop them. What do? Do you just let them rampage through the setting, just going, yeah, I just rampage into the building, I grab the guy where I think is the bad guy, I shoot him in the face, I walk off ignoring the cops trying to stop me?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What do you do as a GM? Or you meant to just go, well, I embrace that as part of your you expressing yourself, and I can't do anything to stop it in any case, so I guess I just let you do it, and you just keep rampaging around, destroying stuff?
Part of the issue...
Are you meant to stop them? Are you meant to just go, okay, well, I guess I just have to think about what happens next?
Yeah. See, part of the issue is sort of, if you're in a more realistic setting, like, say your Savage Worlds game is in, 1950s New York, and it's like a gang mafia thing, yet the players have the same level of invincibility. Or you're in a low fantasy woofer up style thing where, like, life is cheap, but one character has got like 80 weapon skill and plus 30 parry, and like they're immune to blades, and it's just like the genre seems to have changed a little bit.
I'll tell you right now, the biggest problem in 4th Ed Wolfrup is if you stack enough weapon skill and parry and a shield, you become immune to guns and bullets and arrows, because you can just oppose them all and kind of effectively walk it off. You can theoretically bracket somebody so they can't block both ways with the shield, but it's by no means guaranteed, and it means most averagely statted NPCs have almost no chance of hurting them. It's grim. It can be very, very rough when you're like, okay, well, you can just walk through endless hordes of mooks. Yeah, it is rough in the extreme. But yeah, I mean, you're functionally immune, and like the 10 guard can't stop you. If I send 20 of the 10 guard after you, they can't stop you. And a player realizes that and goes, well, I'm just going to bulldoze into this house, I'm just going to kill everybody here. I'm going to walk away ignoring the guard. Like, you can beat that by basically making the entire game about it. By going, okay, well, you have to sleep at some point, the guys get you at some point. But then your game becomes about trying to catch out your player because they're ruining things. Is it boring adult conversation time? Or like you go, okay, well, I'll put up with this session. It really destroys the immersion of my campaign, I think, but I'll let it go. I don't think it's a particularly great situation to find yourself in as a GM when a player can, like, especially once games are meant to be kind of gritty, where it's like, oh, well, it's all grim and gritty. No, I'm immune to everything. Ha ha ha. I get stronger every time another person attacks me.
Yeah.
Which is how default 4th Ed works. I become even more competent every time someone attacks me and fails. That's not a particularly fun circumstance for a GM. Oh, it's really dangerous. Even a goblin can take it out in life. No, we can't.
Yeah, no.
Not even the slightest.
I think fourth edition Wolfram is keeping a lot of the aesthetics of grim and gritty. The reality seems to be a little bit different, though. At least beyond the starting characters.
The problem is you can stack, modify. There's now 2 ways to stack pluses. You get your raw stats, weapon skill, and then you can buy skill as well, which means that you get closer and closer to 100% pretty easily. And then you have advantage, which stacks additional plus 10s every time you win a test. A stacking plus 10 bonus that hangs around until you fail a test or get a condition or something. And then you can buy bonus SL, which are every time I succeeded a test, and at 100 I only fail in 98 plus or 96 plus. and I've got rerolls for when I do that. And then I have bonus SL, which means that every time I succeed in a test, I get additional success levels added on. And you rapidly can stack. I had 2 characters stack that up and basically become invincible to a certain extent. Or certainly what I needed to do to fight them was extremely difficult. And you need to calibrate all of the bad guys so they're at most 20 weapon skill underneath the other players. So I had to have guys with 120 weapon skill, 200 weapon skill to fight them.
Yeah.
Or like 100 weapon skill plus a bunch of bonus SL on a successful test. It's not good.
I could see some sort keeping some sort of verisimilitude with. Okay, like these, the party's gotten a reputation. They've got these 1 or 2 absolute killers of men like amongst them. We're going to have to hire the best mercenaries, or get really sneaky, like dousing an area in flaming oil, or something out of the box. Like,
But like the thing is, these games often advertise themselves as being gritty. All right. Have you ever tried to fight 2 people at the same time?
I've had a few LARP situations where it didn't do very well.
In person, no.
Like in real life, the amount of people who can beat 2 people at the same time, assuming the people are at a minimum level of competent, right? Okay, you can beat 2 babies, whatever. But like these games these are realistic. Guys who can win a fight 2-on-1 are vanishingly rare. 3, 4, 5-on-1? Like, can anyone do that?
Like, one guy ever?
Like if you were taking on people who roughly know what they're doing, not very good, but know what they're doing, understand the basics of things. Like if you had someone, one guy overpowered, knocked unconscious, 15 Gardaí today in a brawl, would you hear that news ever?
I mean, it would be massive news. Like,
it would be massive. Like 15 Gardaí were left in hospital today after one man with a broken bottle decided to carve them all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone would be like, something happened there. You can't just beat up 15 guys,
I get the impression that most people, when talk about, I held off 5 guys, if they're not lying, mostly used intimidation.
Yeah. Or a weapon the other side didn't have.
Yeah, actually.
I held off 5 guys. What did you do? Well, I shot them with my gun and they all ran away. I'm like, yeah, that'll do it, I suppose. That'll do it.
Or if it's a narrow doorway and you've got a pike and they have to get through a corridor to get to you, yeah, you might be able to hold off some people like that. But yeah, it sort of goes into the power fantasy element of a game, and there's the question of, does your game better with that power fantasy element?
Like, I don't mind one guy being able to fight 5 in a fantasy game. That's fine. But you shouldn't then say it's really gritty and realistic, because that's not gritty and realistic. That is the farthest thing from gritty and realistic, There's no such thing as the invincible sword saint who walks through basically lesser people. There is in a very high fantasy fiction, but it's not like you can't get so good that in real life you can just ignore 5 people. If your game's kind of meant to be realistic, it's not meant to be like that. And other goblins, you'll take them down pretty easily. If you were fighting 10 well-trained 8-year-old kids with knives and a certain level of fearlessness, I don't think you'd do as well as you think you would.
Yeah, like an awful lot of RPGs are are not anywhere close to realism in combat. Mainly because realistic combat is probably going to get PCs killed incredibly quickly.
Yes, absolutely. So our combats aren't realistic, and we should probably stop saying, "Oh, it's a really gritty, realistic gamer." That doesn't sound realistic. I think is a counter that should get retired, because the games are not realistic. They're not mapping anything that relates to the real world, like outnumbering bonuses should be crippling, should be basically impossible, and every fight should be about outnumbering, because that's how it's worked pretty much every time in human history there's conflict. The best strategy is outnumbering.
Yeah. Like some games are better at referring to that than others. King Arthur Pendragon makes it very clear that if you're getting outnumbered on a battlefield, you're you're in dire trouble. You're going to lose.
Barring absolutely exceptional terrain.
Yeah.
Which the main effect of which is usually to cut down people's outnumbering bonuses. That is the main effect of most. We fought them in a narrow place where they can only come along 5 at a time. That's how we beat them. Oh no, it was our supernatural skill with spears. No, only 5 of them could fight 5 of us at a time, and we were slightly better individually. So we won.
It's a little bit between the old Tale of the 300 Spartans and like the movie Tale of the 300 Spartans. It's just like one is they form a very strong shield line and force the enemy to come to them, and the other one is just we're Spartans, it'll be fine.
They're all like they're they're all like PCs. Oh, all right.
Like it is this thing of we RPG players are trained to believe that one skilled combatant can disable and take out a larger number of lesser foes.
Yeah, I think it started. I think it's sort of baked into the inheritance of D&D into the rest of the genre, where like D&D started off as based on the war game Chainmail, which is very explicitly said a hero unit counts as equivalent of 4 regular men. And so you would like roll 4 dice, and I think you'd have to get 4 kills in one turn to hurt a hero. And that sort of carried over to the design of the early D&D, where once you think you hit level 4, you basically were allowed to do your level in hits to surrounding enemies that were like 1 hit dice. So like you say, there's 4 goblins around me or 4 orcs, and I just like get an attack on all of them and probably kill half of them every round.
I'd argue that if you were going to try and put some semblance of reality on that, you might say that those hero units are using terrain cleverly, are ganging up very quickly on one small part of the enemy force, and then moving on, are more mobile, but in like just being able to take on more, many times their number at the same time. That's just ridiculous.
But then the fact is that sort of hero behavior is sort of based on people like Conan or Elric, and they very clearly were able to take on hordes of lesser people with their various just like earned skills.
Oh sure, like
there's multiple times where they capture Conan. It's just like, we had to send in like 24 guards just to put chains on him because he just kept killing people.
Or like, how did the Germans ever win World War II or lose World War II? The Tiger was so much better than the Challenger. Like, that's often how RPG players see it. It's like, but it's so much better a tank. No, the problems are logistic wise, and they're also outnumbered massively. So that's why it doesn't,
You don't have to penetrate the armor. You just need to fire ineffective shells against it until its own engine breaks under its perfect German engineering.
Yeah, logistics are something that often get overlooked in RPGs and even war games, because logistics aren't as interesting to most people.
Yeah, there's a lot of it I think maybe can be blamed on like older editions of older games would have often have like really harsh healing rules. Like AD&D would have had you heal 1 hit point per day. Therefore, when you've gone into the dungeon, you need to leave and come back in a month to get all your hit points back. But then people would argue, well, I get my spells back every day. Therefore, we could just cast spells in a day and be fully healed by morning. And that sort of paradigm sort of just shot the logistics in the foot. Also, people don't track ammo. Yeah, like, so it's like, I'm in Cyberpunk. I'm this massive hulking cyborg with like a Gatling gun in my stomach. It fires 15,000 rounds a minute. Have you paid for those 15,000 rounds? Shut up.
Yeah, well, that's more an enforcement issue, but I get what you're saying. Like a lot, if a game's not tracking ammo's not going to be a constraint. Like, it's that simple. Speaking of Cyberpunk, there's a lot of ways to become effectively invulnerable to normal people in it. They do have armor stacking rules in the 2020 rulebook because, as they discovered, people were stacking armor. So they even described, like, you can't just keep putting on armor jacket after armor jacket. You won't become invulnerable, you'll just become immobile. But for some reason, they thought it was a good idea to exempt skin weave from this. Skin weave is a nanotech BioWare thingy that makes your skin effectively like a light armor jacket in itself, and that doesn't count as a layer for stacking. So you can slap on like another armor jacket over that, and you've no penalties, and you are effectively going around in like a bunch more armor than most people, without any a drawback. Except having to take silicon pills every so often for the nanites. By cyberpunk standards, that's a fairly low end trick. The mad stuff really comes in with the full bore conversions from the Chromebooks. Basically, you're a brain in a cyborg body. Like, you're not just replacing, you're replacing everything but the brain. And the baseline full bore conversions are maximum normal human stats, and they go up from there. And you can get them up to inhuman levels, and then you can start adding on stuff like the Cyber Matrix reactive body plating, which is a suit of flexible body armor. Well, it says body armor, but it's built into your cyborg skin. It's riddled with laser sensors, and if anyone targets you with a laser aimed weapon, because most people use laser sights, the RBA alerts you to your interface plugs. And what this does is you're replacing the difficulty to hit that they would normally have with the full Borg's reflexes, which are going to be inhuman, plus their dodge skill, which is probably going to be high, plus a D10, and that's generally going to be far higher. And that also applies even if somebody's firing at you from point blank range, which they probably should have turned off the laser sight for, but it is what it is. And that doesn't even go into the horrendous weapons that only a full bore conversion can use, because otherwise firing those calibers would just break the arms of anyone else.
And people wonder where all those cyberpunk anime got their ideas from.
Like, the full board conversion stuff is super cool. That's why people do it. And then it also gets a massive amount of power. So hey, that sells supplements, and that's all good.
Yeah. Oh, I loved playing one. And then he got hit by an advanced missile, and there was a hole through his chest, and that was it. and that was entirely fair.
The thing is, though, that some settings will have solutions to these kinds of things. Like, I believe Cyberpunk has the Cyber Psycho Squad, where you have a whole bunch of former mad Fullborgs who are trained to hunt down other Fullborgs.
Oh yeah, they're effectively they're much like their opposition, but they're technically on the right side of the law, and well supplied with very large firearms.
That's one of the things. Is like, if you have your setting where these rules are true, then surely your setting should have adjusted for these things. Let's say if you're in a fantasy game like D&D, you're not just sending 0 level town guards against them because this is Waterdeep, and you have a whole bunch of secret mask lords paying for better police. So you have this standardized squad is 10 second level fighters with a 5th level fighter commander and a 3rd level mage as backup. And it can feel a little bit contrived, but then you look at the kind of stuff that happens in Waterdeep every day, and it doesn't seem quite so crazy. But then again, you have a place like Eberron where it's deliberately meant to be low level, and then you ask can this town survive even a couple of 3rd level PCs going through it? Woe forbid if there's a 5th level PC, they can just fireball an entire squad of town guards off the map at any moment.
And that's another factor when players get access to kind of AoE weaponry. Large numbers of low-level characters often become not a threat or basically low hit. Like a lot of there's a lot of guys in outnumber is good, and the players at that point start pulling out the rocket launchers or the grenade launchers and just trimming out. Okay, well I don't feel like fighting 10 guys. I'm just going to hit them with a few grenades. And then at which point are you meant as a GM meant to start basically making life hard if people start using AoEs all the time? Or are you like, okay, well, fair enough, good tactics, I guess, And that's what you end up doing.
It's going to depend on who in this setting is going to be worried when they hear that there's a bunch of yahoos with rocket launchers running around? Like, because there are very few places on Earth where there's a bunch of people going around with rocket launchers is an okay thing to hear.
But what happens then when the guards show up to take the rocket launchers off the players? The players just rocket launcher the guards. Does your game become about a running series of things where every guard in the city gets murdered trying to take the stuff off the players? Like, do you need to have a reserve squad in the city somehow of magical, high potency characters who are only the glass is only broken on when the PCs get out of hand? Do they pull in another adventuring party? How much of your campaign becomes about dealing with the fact that your players are too powerful?
This is something that, a fantasy game will deal by. Well, okay, you guys are on the side of good and you go off to fight high level things that stay in the mountains for some reason. Yeah, you fight dragons. Why do the dragons not come to the city? Yeah, why do the dragons not come to the city? Why is the army of trolls menacing this small village and not like everywhere else? This is like because we need appropriate level bad guys.
There is the apocryphal's tale of of a party throwing over a town and discovering that the kindly old shopkeeper turns out to be a retired 20th level wizard and is not pleased at that sort of thing is can be pulled out if players are taking the making things ridiculous.
So I know a lot of GMs resorted to the old saw of the bartender's a retired fighter. And he was... What level are you guys? 8th. Well, he's 15th. So come and have a go of the thing. And that is basically GMs having that experience of players who could wade through your standard statted guards and throwing in a couple of people into the setting who can stop them if they get out of hand. Like, this is not a new problem. This is a very old problem that has cropped up. I mean, that's where the old theory comes from. It comes from, okay, are there people that can stop them in the setting? Well, there should be, I guess, so let's invent some people. Even if you look at the advancement and you go, well, no, these guys are way beyond what a standard character ever gets to. Because often, XP is profoundly unrealistic, and levels are profoundly unrealistic, and we put them into the games because they're fun, and we don't really fully get the consequences of doing that. Why do you learn so fast from fighting things? That is a really standard kind of cliche. It's like, I'm a 15-year-old kid, but I've been leveling this adventure path for the last, thing, so I'm now level 8. So I'm, monstrously strong. Whereas other people are like, I've been a 10 guard for 3 years, I'm still the same level.
I mean, it's kind of lampshaded by, you're being put into extreme scenarios, so you're having to learn quickly. You're getting more practice in a day than your average town guard will get in a year. And that's true to a point, because adventurers are the weirdos who actually go into these dungeons and dangerous situations, but they do learn implausibly fast. Like, even with those caveats.
Okay, so do you think that these sort of situations should be solved? Because they're sort of mechanical problems, right?
They're absolutely mechanical problems. They're 100% mechanical problems.
So do you solve them with like setting building, saying, the average king will have this many 5th level fighters at their disposal, or the cops will have this many, the SWAT teams with, disabling weapons? Or do you solve it by hacking the mechanics and going, okay, guys, you are immune to bullets, I need to fix this?
Okay, so if you do the first one, you have counter forces available to everybody if someone gets out of hand. A player might reasonably ask, you need us to stop this bad guy. Yes. Why don't you use your elite counter squad who, when we started to kick off and took all those people hostage and decided to rob a bank, you sicked them on us. Why don't you use them? Like, oh no, they're for stopping people like you. They're not for stopping dragons. So you could have a small amount of a little bit of hang on a second.
Well, you could also say that, well, you're expendable and they're not.
That will go down super well with a party. That will go down super well.
But yeah, no, I actually I think that's a very reasonable question. Like I've been in campaigns where these high level NPCs are hiring us to fight off this threat. Why aren't they popping out and doing it when they could do it in like a fraction of the time and at no risk? It does break immersion for me a bit, I have to say, when it happens. And well, you do have settings where the main character is being incredibly powerful. Does actually make sense. Say superhero games, like the Superman tier, Warhammer 40,000 Death Watch, like even before like rank 8, which is the final rank of the character classes. The characters, the party's fighting off armies and winning generally, and but that actually makes sense in that universe where you can have characters who are that much more powerful than your common man, bug, robot.
Well, it's so the other option you asked was about is this a mechanical fix? And at that point, we're again looking at a GM doing not a GM's job, which is to dismantle the mechanics of a game and try to house rule it so it's no longer a problem. And if you go to any Discord or forum or like mailing list or BBS board or physical meetup, people will raise these common problems and they'll look for solutions, which are often in the hands of inexpertly applied house rules. And if you're very, very fortunate, a rules revision from the game designer, because that's who should actually be solving it. Like, scaling in any RPG is a massive problem. This is what we're really talking about. This is how very rarely does this happen with starting characters. This usually happens a few sessions to a lot of sessions in, when the initial play of the game, the starting character play was relatively well play tested, but the scaling was not play tested at all. And players just outmode their opposition in some way. And this is again comes down to, well, how well was this game designed for end of a year in or 2 years in? Was the game designed for this, or did anyone even check? It's a consistent problem. Almost every RPG is a point at which it breaks, and some of them are quite quick, and then the breaking can have consequences on the world and the story you're trying to tell.
But in that case, if this is a known problem for a game, is it okay for a GM to say, well, we're going to stop the power curve at a certain point. We're going to say you can't level up past level 6, or can't raise any of your stats past 10, or past like 8. Because we're trying to maintain. Is it okay to at some point limit or even take away progression just to maintain the level of game you want?
You might have to, but I would imagine most you have to have the conversation beforehand, and at which point, like if you're playing D&D, say, okay, guys, we cap at level 3. I'll be like, why are we playing D&D? That's my first question. Why are we playing D&D? Like, we're not going to be able to level all the way up. Why are we playing this game with 20 levels if we're going to stop at level 3?
Yeah, I've noticed that even amongst third-party 5th edition D&D supplements, a number of them do cap the levels. Trodvang Adventure stops at level 10, Brian Colonia stops at 6, and they focus on what happens in those levels. And honestly, I think it's a better experience because you're not getting into the into the number crunching and, in my opinion, fun destroying stuff that can occur in the higher levels.
It is this is a consistent problem. I think almost every GM will have encountered this at some point, a point at which the player or a character gets too strong and becomes often a menace. Like, some players it won't be a problem with. Other players yearn to tread the jeweled thrones of the world beneath their sandals. And a player like that, if you've had a player who basically becomes an unstoppable super criminal, what exactly can you do? The ideal situation is don't get in that situation in the first place if that's not the kind of game you want to tell. Are you meant to be kind of it's his choice. He should be allowed to become the monster that slays all men and takes what he wants and becomes a supervillain. Basically, that's his thing, and you should just deal with it, I guess.
Well, maybe that is part of the fantasy. He becomes king by his own hand, or whatever.
Yeah, but then the other players aren't happy about it, and you're like, oh god, I better start running my game now. I better start running my game right now. So that's the challenge of running with a poorly balanced set of rules or poorly balanced progression. Like the game literally starts to break down because what you thought you could run, the stories you thought you could tell, you can't reliably tell because they're reliant on the players not deciding, okay, we're just gonna take it out. Because I've seen one of my characters or one of my players, when he realized his character could not be stopped by anyone around him, became a anime supervillain. You know, he became it was in Exalted, and he became an anime supervillain. Like very, very quickly, he fought every other member of the party and beat them like a one-on-one PvP fight. He instigated at different times and beat them.
That sounds like a player acting out, but then again, I
No, this is who this person is. It's just in every other RPG there was some dragon or something else you could drop on him to stop him, and he realized there was nobody, and he turned into an anime supervillain. His plan was to destroy all civilization and just have it as a giant army following him around. And if someone could build an army strong enough to stop him, they deserved to stop him. And everyone else he'd just kill.
all right.
Does sound very exalted.
And nobody could stop him. It is pretty exalted, but no one could stop him. And like what the game I was trying to run that at the end, I was like, this is basically impossible now. This guy is too much of a supervillain to hang around and keep telling the story of. And all the other players are annoyed at some level because they have all been beaten by him in a one-on-one fight at this stage. That at some point they're going, right, we're gonna have this guy, and he beat us up. So it was building towards, I think, every one of the party against him. But they'd all kind of been beaten into line, except okay, well, that's he's stronger. We'll accept that. So yeah, craziness. Because I've been there. I've seen the end of this particular story, and it's not super happy. I have seen the end of the story, and it's not super happy.
So the best solution appears to be to see it coming and make adjustments beforehand. Seems to be what the circle of training.
Maybe. Or, make sure your system can handle this if it's going to come up, and be prepared to pull out if it's not. So yeah, just a story. It comes down to, I think, scaling. And I think mechanics. It's primarily a mechanics problem. It's not actually. It's triggered if a player decides to act on it, but it's a mechanics problem that it exists in the first place. That one man can fight 100 effectively. If that happens, probably shouldn't. But games aren't calibrated with enough realism for logistics and stuff to matter. So they go by the very simple extraction, and under simple extraction, you can get away with it. Final thoughts, Dave.
Final thoughts. I suppose yet again, it's good to have the clear adult conversations about power levels. Trying to head off some of these issues ahead of time, or accept that or make it clear that it's fine for you to go all out. And to have the conversations if issues crop up in games that were unforeseen.
Yep. Scarr?
Me being me, my usual solution is to consider prep, or just see if you think this is going to be a problem ahead of time, adjust your campaign to suit. Don't be afraid to leverage the setting to produce things. Like, be aware of what's available. It's like D&D both has this problem in that it's very easy, like level 5 people to just walk all over town guards, but also has infinite solutions to this problem because there's an entire monster manual and infinite planes of existence from which, level 15 Griblies can just sort of pour out whenever you need them. So just think about, like, is this going to be an issue for you? And if you get surprised by it, it is okay to pause your game and say, wait, hold on, this is starting to seem less realistic now. Can we have a chat about what we do now that, the mechanics have broken the setting? as opposed to preventing it. Basically, prevention is going to be better than cure. So be on the lookout, watch for signs of it happening, and be willing to have your adult conversation about it. Or embrace it and just say, okay, you walk into the machine gun nest, but can you do that and save your friends and steal all the gold? How gutsy are you feeling as a GM? Maybe you can leverage this into ridiculous superhero shenanigans, completely divorced from reality. Maybe that'll work out for you. Or maybe this is the signal. Maybe we end the campaign soon. There are options.
Could well be. But while we discuss these options further, you can join us on our Discord or contact us through the social medias. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike 1.3 license.